And the first time I asked my wife, would you please stay next to me when I want to take a shower, I felt so weak and so incapacitated and so out of control.
Here we are again on another episode, and I'm here with Mr. Macaroni. If you don't know who Mr. Macaroni is, actually his name is Ron Backer. He's a doctor, a very intelligent person that throughout this year has spread knowledge to all his patients, and now he's applying everything he's been doing to himself. Mr. Backer, I'm happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. I'm very happy to be here. In the present.
Explain that. What do you mean happy to be here exactly?
Well, for the past 2 years, I've been aware of, one, I have a sort of condition of depression in my bone marrow that might evolve in the future to leukemia. I had an 8-month siege in 2023 of Lyme disease that was long delay in being treated, mostly on my stubbornness. And ultimately I was cured. And then I had a great time after I met Daniela, recovering my muscle strength that I probably lost about 25% of my upper and lower extremity through a joint effort. And I mean that not as a pun. I mean that as a joint effort between Daniela and my wife, and the focus on muscles and mobility. It has been a joint effort to get me in better state of not only mind but body than I was before the past 2 years, preceding 30 years at least.
Let's go a little bit back those years, and I know you are as active as your wife. You also play golf, you also play tennis. You are always in constant activity, like running, biking, and everything, which this is way before. So tell me more about how active were you when you were younger, and also I know you have a shift where you became vegetarian.
Yes.
What made you change that? Because this is all, I mean, these past 2 years, yes, they were tough years, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure these 2 years you've made them really good through them, because you have a past that built you to be a stronger person, the strong person that you are now.
Well, as a kid, and by that I mean probably up to about age 16, I played hackers tennis, I call it, with no formal training, and I did chores inside and outside around the house, but no active sports. And then when I went to college at around 17 in Vermont, I took up an emphasis and a major in skiing, and being outside in the countryside in the open air, because that's always interested me, and weather really doesn't bother me. And that might be because I have a sort of Spartan attitude about discomfort and getting upset with weather, except for noise, perhaps. And after I left college after 2 years, I did a lot of physical work, both in kitchens and restaurants and in my dad's store. And then I drove a school bus for disabled kids. And then I worked farming at a resort, or landscaping major in Arizona. And then when I went back to school in Boston from Arizona, I was in the Army Reserves and ended up as a medic in Texas, where I played tennis for the for the regiment team, always in fatigues and combat boots, because I figured that it would stress my body a little bit, and I'd have an advantage wearing heavy boots and full fatigues. For when I'd have matches, I would play better. But again, I didn't really play better because I had any new skills. It was just endurance. And
how did you gain that endurance?
well, number one, you have calisthenics every day, and you have marching. And then I played tennis for the regiment time, which was in my early 20s.
How did you balance that? Because now you're telling me you're working, you're telling me you're doing this exercise, and now you're studying. How did you do that? What were your superpowers that most people don't have? What is it? What would you say it is?
I have an inner drive. It wasn't to excel at that time. I never thought about excelling. I didn't really compete a lot in that sense of against others. It was against myself. And I just did it because I wanted to do it, not because I had to do it. I just wanted to do it. When we came back to the States, and I was in medical school for my last 2 years in Boston, I did not have a lot of opportunity to do outdoor activities. And in my internship and first year residency, I did not have a lot of opportunities to do that.
So when did you start?
I'm trying to recollect. I actually started, let me see, in about 1980. I did a little tennis with my wife, and but not anything serious. I actually avoided exercise, and until we moved across the street from the ocean, and then I took up cold water torments, teaching myself to windsurf. And that was like watching a Keystone Cop, or getting up on the board and then getting battered back into the water by the wind on the sail. And I actually did that and biking and some tennis for about the next 10 or 10 years. And then in 1990, when we moved from the North Shore of Boston back into Cambridge, I did ride my bike about 10 miles each way to my office in Winchester, because they had a bike trail that went from Fresh Pond, and that I liked very much. We played tennis and we biked. I biked a lot more. I was in very good condition biking. I could keep up with...
You did it every day, going to work. That's a lot.
And then...
You also did swimming.
Some swimming, but when we started coming to Florida is when I really put on the full court press, so as to speak. I played tennis, I hacked around at golf, and for the first 3 or 4 years in the early 2000s, every other weekend I would commute from October to May from Boston to Florida, to either Fort Lauderdale or Palm Beach or Miami, whichever I could catch the flight on a late Thursday afternoon. And then I formally retired in 2007 for 6 months, and I was able to get a job in the summertime on Cape Cod in a community clinic. In the wintertime, we did golf and tennis. And
I know you still were riding your bike on those hills.
Well,
yes.
I was riding my bike on Cape Cod, and I was riding my bike down to play tennis and doing swimming at the swim club on St. Ambrose. But it became painfully obvious that I was putting my life in the driver's hands, crossing some of the major thoroughfares, and I just decided not to do that anymore.
And how did you supplement that activity? What did you change from that activity to
I got into the step mode, which was, somebody said you should do 10. My agricultural mentor for farmer advice told me he was doing 4 to 7 miles a day, walking twice a day from 4 to 7 in the morning, and then in the early afternoon, and then going for bike rides on the west. He was living on the west coast of Florida, and we sort of have a type of competition.
Oh.
It's sort of like a TV program that was probably in the 60s or the 70s. Ollie, can you top this? Both on intellectual or world events or physical or plants or developing new tastes in agricultural products. But anyhow, I did steps, and then
In all that activity that you're telling me,
it's
I
not,
know
yeah,
you do farming.
yeah.
Where did that come from? When did you start doing it? And because that's very active. I mean, you got to be lifting, you're going to be pulling, you're down the sun. How did you manage to do it? Did you do it while you were doing while you were with your patients?
To me, no. First of all, the farming, in quotes, was really weeding, which I did as a child in my mother's garden. Okay. And that's how I learned to distinguish weeds from so-called productive plants, which is mostly flowers. And then when we were living in Switzerland, I raised tomatoes out in a house that we were house sitting.
How do you make tomatoes there? That's crazy.
How do you raise tomatoes?
Yes.
You buy some seeds and you plant them, and then they grow, and you stake them and you harvest. But I never seemed to get them to the red stage, so I decided to try making sour and pickled tomatoes, and I didn't know about the fermentation process of how you do it, and I didn't realize that this foam that formed on the top of this 50-gallon wooden barrel was not toxic. It's carbon dioxide mixed with some of the fermentation breakdown products. But to me, I love to work the dirt. And it's sort of like male birthing in my mind. You know, you start with the seed, and it grows into a mature plant, and it becomes productive, and you enjoy the fruits of your harvest.
And how many hours does it take you to do? Because you got to be outside in the garden. How much effort did you get? Do you do it? Like, at what time do you wake up? Is there a specific time that you have to do it?
Well, I have my winter schedule and I have my summer schedule.
So how does it? How many hours would you say it takes?
I don't count the hours.
Okay.
What I do is there's just something that goes off in my head, particularly when I'm in the Northeast on Cape Cod. Number one, when we get there, it's mating season for the birds. So I hear the birds in the morning, and there's all different types of birds that are out there, and I know the symphony of their songs, and I don't need to have, although I love classical music and contemporary and jazz, I don't need pods in my ears. I'm listening to the sounds of nature around me. And when I'm working in the garden, I just might just say one line of a song or a symphony or a mantra or a poem, and just in my head while I'm doing the task. But I really don't count the time, and that causes me sometimes to feel a meriting irritability on the part of my wife, Benny, because I just get lost.
Okay.
I get lost in it. So if I were to
So that means you don't have breakfast and you don't go out. So how are you doing that? How do you manage that?
Well,
because you're trying to keep yourself healthy the
yes.
whole time.
How do I manage? I don't manage meals well, and I don't manage my water well, and I don't manage. I try to outmanage the hypoglycemia that I get, because I can go, like yesterday I went from dinner at 6 o'clock till 2 days ago, dinner at 6 o'clock at night to having breakfast at 12 o'clock the next day, which was 18 hours. And
somehow you manage to make this work. How do you do it? Because there's got to be a way that you're making this work.
I don't have an explanation in a lay sense, nor as a very weak scientist. It's pure drive. I have a.
Because you have a very intuitive
I have an
personality.
intensive drive, and I kind of enjoy it. And it's almost a sense of deprivation gives me energy. exercise gives me endorphins in my brain. And I've avoided exercise because I thought I didn't have the time. It wasn't until I had the bout of Lyme disease with not only loss of muscle, but also mobility in my shoulder and my left wrist. And I also had an injury playing tennis 20 years ago that I needed 2 operations to get some mobility, but I was compromised. And I almost said the P word, but I was angry with myself that I wouldn't take pain medication before I went, which was recommended before I went for physical therapy. Because one, the medication affected my bowels, and 2, I always had early morning appointments, and if I took a pain medication, either an opiate or an analog of an opiate, I felt sort of, in the contemporary description, stoned, and I didn't want to drive stoned, and I didn't want to show up at my office or the hospital after the physical therapy stoned or feeling high. So I didn't, and I paid a very significant price. My right knee just doesn't function the way it should, and I had problems bending over and getting down on the floor and reaching under the bed to pick up my side, which was socks and old shoes and papers and everything else that a slovenly male sometimes is prone to, and I felt badly about it. I didn't express it very much to anybody, but I've always felt badly that I didn't push myself in physical therapy. But something happened after we came down here in the winter, and that was I discovered that I liked golf and I liked tennis, but this injury was due to tennis, so I had to find something that was a little less active than tennis, which I still was active, mostly at the net. No, I don't run, and I don't.
You still play tennis until now?
I'm playing once a week now, and I was very good at the net because it was quick movements, but I discovered I liked golf, and then I fell in with this group of 3 other guys that walked 9 holes at 7 in the morning, which worked out perfectly with my mind time schedule, because it meant in an hour and a half we could do 8,000 steps walking the golf course, and I could be home between 9 and 10, and then I had the rest of the day to do what else I wanted and we needed to help get done until
how many steps a day are you doing now?
I do between 7 and 17,000 steps a day, but I'm not so sure that's necessarily
Accurate?
No, I'm not sure that's really giving me enough. I know it's not giving me enough exercises, and what I have.
You're more active, like.
Well,
than a lot of people.
I think that what I've learned through our sessions together since February, and particularly after what's evolved from my recovery from the Lyme disease I recovered from the Lyme microbially in September of 2023. But we didn't start working with you until February of 2024. And this is in contradistinction to the very superficial knowledge that I thought, and I'm not criticizing physical therapy, but as a physician and I guess as a health economist in a very small way, physical therapy is usually limited by the system that we have, or the healthcare delivery system, to a certain number of sessions for certain areas of the body's problems, musculoskeletal. And what I learned through this, it's an epiphany. And Binny mentioned the same thing. If you have something happening in one part of the body, it not only has side effects locally or influence on functions locally, but on the other side of the body. And not only superiorly, but inferiorly in your upper extremities and lower extremities. And that is sort of like the gospel that I'm trying to explain to friends and to patients why you not only should do regular exercise, but you should exercise multiple parts of your body, and sometimes not simultaneously, but within the same session, because, to quote a course that I took on the internet, motion is lotion.
Motion is lotion, exactly. I totally agree with you on that one.
And I think it is imperative to do regular exercise program on all your joints of your body that's possible. And I share with Benny, and it may be projection and it may be superstition, that I have this condition that very well within a couple of years can develop into leukemia, okay? But I really feel that there is a possible, I don't know, documented statistically in double-blind studies that you can forestall certain degenerative disorders or certain malignant disorders through exercise, but I do believe in the mind-body connection. And when I was sitting in bed, in the hospital, recovering from COVID, I felt I had strength. And that strength is functioning in two ways. It's functioning in a physical way because I could get out of bed while my mates, who were younger than me, some by 10 years, were like, I'm not criticizing them, I said they just didn't have any mobility. And I know that came from conditioning and the workouts that we were doing with you. So I live for today. When it comes to my certain things like my seeds, I'm living for the next season. But I'm living for today and the next season, of which an integral and very important part of it is the conditioning and the training that we're getting through you. So far as my diet, which I want to discuss, that came from a dream I had in 1989. That I just said, I woke up and I knew I wanted to be a vegetarian. And I tried about 8 months later to eat some fish for one meal and some chicken, and it just didn't feel right. That has to do with killing things.
What's the difference that you found in your body functioning when you became a vegetarian? Do you feel better? How do you manage to have all your protein in? Because right now that's what you're doing. How do you manage all of that?
Well, the first thing I noticed was something I didn't like, and that was my pooper wasn't working the way it formerly did. And I tried all these things that I would tell my patients on how to have. People come in, they talk to a doctor, and it's sort of like going to confession. They'll say, gee, I'm not pooping the way I would like to. So you come up with some holistic approaches, and then you talk about chemicals that assist in having, quote, being normal bowel movements. And so it didn't work. Nothing worked. More often than not, it was a cup of coffee or some exercise, or riding the bike or walking. But never pleased. And that feeling that I always heard from people older than myself, if I don't go, I just don't feel good, And I know that feeling now, but I don't feel it anymore. So what do I eat to get my protein? Some people don't like tofu, and I don't like soft or fried tofu. I like it on occasion. I like it in curries. I like it when, but that's not the main form. I like Trader Joe's tempeh, and I can eat a half to a whole bar a day, and it's got 19 grams per serving, which is a half a gram, and that's pretty much what...
What's a breakfast for you?
What's a breakfast for me? Well, the breakfast is usually an egg It's usually if my wife makes something, but more often not when I'm going out, which I like to play golf at 7 to 7:30 in the morning, walking my 9 holes. It'll either be a bagel with cream cheese or it'll be a
That's
piece
to
of
give you energy.
Huh?
That's to give you energy.
yeah, and a cup of coffee, and or a banana thrown in when I go shopping for them, and or an egg, or some organic crunchy peanut butter on a piece of whole wheat toast. And then I have something for lunch.
What is that something for?
Usually leftovers.
Leftovers, would that be like your tempeh? Would that be like
It'll be whatever was in our dinner the night before, or 2 nights before, or 3 nights before, plus tempeh.
Okay, so I notice you are very careful on the type of, if you're having pasta, you're careful on having a high protein pasta. So that's a nice, how did you discover that? How do you do that?
How did I discover the tempeh?
No, the pasta that has more protein, or how do you do how to choose? Because
I look at every single label when we go shopping.
What do you look for in those labels?
I'm not concerned with the amount of fat because I just don't eat high fat except for cheeses. And I look at the protein content. But my whole diet is not, most people think that vegetarians only eat pasta, with tomato sauce or something like that.
Well, if you tell me vegetarian, the people think that you're eating lettuce with lettuce. So it's
I eat lettuce with pieces of tempeh in it.
Yes.
Or we go to P.F. Chang's and they have lovely lettuce with small cubes of tofu mixed with other vegetables, and eat a lot of it, and I like it very much.
So I know you like to have all from your garden. You like it in your kitchen. What do you think it's what do you say is, so we know the difference on having your own garden and going to any supermarket and buy whatever is on top of there? What's the advantage you have on having a garden?
Oh, to me, that's a profound question. So I think...
Because I know you do it because you enjoy it.
I enjoy it. I think it's all part of what I consider what every person does, regardless of whether they think about it or not. They do internal grooming and they do external grooming. That's what's on the surface. How they look, how they feel their look makes them feel. And then inside are all those complex psychological and physical functions that your body do. So working in the garden is a way, if you think about it, of participating in what's going into your garden, or at least supplementing what goes into your body. The nature of the seed, the nature of the material you're growing it in, the nature of how you deal with pests, the nature of how you emotionally get endorphins from being in that environment. I don't want to depend on and we farm with organic methods. I'm not certified organic, but I know how I'm raising it. I'm not saying whether I'm immensely successful at what I raise, but I know what's going into our mouth from our garden is clean. It's clean of E. coli. It's clean of salmonella. I'm not using any water that's coming from it at this point that I'm aware of, a contaminated well, nor outflow from animal storage vats or near animals that are pooping into the earth that's going down 75 feet into the water. I know, and my wife does also, the difference between, she knows better than I do. If she goes to Whole Foods, you can feel a piece of fruit or vegetable and know whether it's, quote, okay, whether it's fresh, how long it's been there. I know what comes out of my garden is fresh to the moment.
And for us that don't know how to have a garden or don't have the space or don't have a garden and just go to a regular supermarket, how would you advise us to buy the best that we can on our fruits and vegetables?
I'm not good at that advice because I really can't advise, because most vegetable and fruit products that are in supermarkets are there because they were transported before they were at full maturity from wherever they were grown.
Okay.
And most people don't do that. And the model in this country is supermarkets or mini markets or pre-processed foods. And those are the big problem. I'm not going to go into that subject in this discussion.
Okay, so I like that advice. For us that don't have the privilege to have our own go to farmer market and make sure it's local. I love that idea. That's something I'm going to use it for.
And possibly organic, even
Organic,
though.
yeah. And we were talking about like other supermarkets like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's that are good options other than the farmer markets, which is also amazing. Great. So now, as a physician, knowing all what you know, and also as a patient, as you've gone through a lot of stuff, what are you doing? What would you do yourself, and what are you doing right now to make yourself feel better? And that's talking about food-wise and activity-wise. Also, like intellectual, social, all of that is very important. So how are you managing to like put all that blend together? Because right now, like you've overcome two serious disease and you're here super good and you're doing great, you're still walking, you're still doing your steps, you're still being super active, you're still waking up at 6 o'clock and doing all your activities. And it's not that those major steps maybe for other persons would have been like, okay, I got to stop and be at home and feel sorry for yourself. So that's something you've never done and you've never even considered.
On very few occasions. I think it's part of the other job you have after 65, and that's working at living. So when you get older, you don't stop working. You've got to work your mind and your body. And by mind, I mean activities that stimulate your brain. You've got to work your mind to get your emotions into some sort of balance.
How do you work that? How did you keep your mind so active?
How do I do it?
Yes.
Well, I read the paper every day. I try to read parts of the paper.
Okay.
I happen to like languages. Not that I read literature in languages, but I have this hypothesis in my brain that the brain cells, until recently, it was thought had a finite lifespan, and I think that they're constantly renewing their nutrition inside the cell, and then they're constantly renewing the ways that they transmit messages along the axons and across the gaps of communication, chemical communication in the brain. So I latched on to, one is the gardening, which does that for me physically and how I feel emotionally. And two, working languages
How many languages do you speak by now?
Well, I speak English fluently. I think I speak Spanish and French semi-fluently. I speak it. I don't write it so well, but I speak it.
No, you speak really good. Like Spanish?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I am teaching myself for the past 3 to 4 years on a Duolingo, Italian, Portuguese, German, and Haitian Creole. And then I also, from time to time, work at trying to get interested in Arabic, Greek, Russian, and Turkish.
Whoa.
So, because I find commonalities linguistically amongst them that make me giggle inside. It really does. I will point out to Biddy, look at this word. America is spelled one way in German and another way in English, and another way in French, and another way in Creole, but there's similarities. So
That's how you're keeping your brain active.
commonality. Yeah, I do, and I try and expand the learning of it, not as a formal student, but as a child would learn a language. So a child
best
learns.
way to learn it.
I think it's the way
Yes.
to learn it. As a child, as a baby learns to communicate in the language of their environment. Period.
That's it. No more to say. That's the way to do it.
I think that there are some forms of I think it's very important to have a good mental outlook. I think it's very important to keep mentally busy, and I also think it's even equally as important to keep physically busy. And that's a problem as we grow older with the deterioration of our muscles and joints.
But you keep yourself physically active.
Because there's something about I got to go outside and check what's going on in the front and with those plants and those bushes and the water system and the this and the that. I didn't do very well this far with the water system, but
You did your best.
I can go out several times a day. It's no different than a parent, particularly a mother, checking that baby multiple times a day to make sure. It's a certain state of alertness, but it also stimulates your brain. It might cause angst, but it's an awakening. And
That's what keeps your drive and
Yeah.
moving. And how do you keep social? How about your friends that are not your plant friends, that are human friends?
My best friends are doctors, okay, to begin with. I have friends of all different backgrounds and likes and hobbies and that. And I have I have one or two very close friends, and then I have several social friends, and then I have friends that, like I call this Hearts of Palm guy, friend in Hawaii, and we talk growing. I've never met him in person.
Oh.
And I text him, and I text other people, and I have my farming friends. Actually, I have probably more social friends on Cape Cod than down here, and they come from all different walks of life.
So here your social friends would be your golf friends, the three that you go at 7 a.m.
I'm sorry. The golf friends, but they're really not close to the heart friends. They're the guys that I think it's important to be out doing an organized activity that isn't solely under my control, and going with a group of 3 other individuals, and it's not always with the same group of people. It's like when Vinny plays her tennis games, they mix and match the people who play more or less at the same level, and that's the way it is with golf. So I golf with women that I only talk with them when you're hitting the ball for 9 holes, and I walk with guys, and then I have my remote plant friends, and I have friends in Europe, and I have in Eastern as well as Western Europe that I maintain contact with.
Okay, so you're really
And
all over.
I'm all over.
Yes.
I'm like manure, all over the place.
That's amazing. And I want to repeat this question to you. I know I did it to Bini. So what is the piece of advice that you would give to your younger self right now to make yourself better? And what is the piece of advice you would give to other younger men? Because like when you're young, you don't care. You just go with the flow. What would be that you would like to transmit?
I don't think necessarily that what worked or works for me is for everyone.
Okay, I agree with you.
Because
I agree, absolutely.
I think that, as my wife has on numerous occasions told me, I'm a very self-absorbed person. And I think that in order to love someone else, you have to love yourself.
Love yourself. I love that.
And that means not doing, if at all avoidable, too many self-destructive physical or emotional undertakings. It means that you have to do some planning ahead in your mind about what ifs. And I think in my case, I could have gone off in many directions, so I could advise somebody, to get some formal education of some sort. I'm not talking about being a doctor or a lawyer or like that, but a formal skill so that you can take pride in your accomplishing something, which is helpful to society. And if you can't, find a way to keep yourself happy in a constructive way. And so far as my present self in advising somebody, I don't, because like the song, I did it my way. And that doesn't mean that it's for everyone else.
For everyone else.
I
agree, absolutely.
And also, if you choose to not replicate, but to partner up, we never know what that partner's going to be like in the future, both physically and mentally. But be adaptable to change, and don't be destructive, and don't be abusive, and be supportive. And I know my wife has fulfilled all that, and I try to do that myself. I think I know I'm happy with me, but I'm more happy having my partnership. But I've been fortunate, and not everybody is.
Absolutely.
So again, love thyself in order to love somebody else.
I love that, and that's so right, and that's what's keeping you all together right now. So you mentioned before that you're planning yourself, and this is just to wrap up to the end. What are your plans for now, for this season? Because you've overcome a lot, and every time you're stronger, you're better, you're mentally active, you're physically active. What are your plans for now to keep on being every time better? Because I've seen better Ronnie every time I see him. So what are you doing? Because that's really making a good change.
Well,
what's your mindset now?
My mindset now is I continue with my mental activities, and I can continue with golf and improve, maybe back to where I was before I had the Lyme disease. But I really feel this program that we've been doing with you is an extremely important part of my life now. I feel it in every aspect of my life. And that's both through Binny encouraging me and complimenting me when I feel like I'm doing not very well with some of the cycles and exercises we do. And you know what you do very well. And I admire and respect, and I know as a professional, you are very well qualified. And you know how to assess the capabilities of a person and to motivate them. And that is not necessarily what I never thought about it in my colleagues or in the personal health experiences I had, but this is not just a health experience. The fact that I can get up from a chair, which I couldn't do without trepidation 6 months ago, the fact that when I had the Lyme disease, when it was the worst, that I couldn't get out of bed. I dreaded getting out of bed or turning in bed. That was 15 months ago. 20 months ago. The fact that I didn't want to even go to the bathroom and sit on the commode because I wasn't sure that I would topple over, and I was even more unsure that I couldn't get up. Remember, I had never had any sort of significant debilitation or illness in my life. And the first time I asked my wife, would you please stay next to me when I want to take a shower, I felt so weak and so incapacitated and so out of control. And then I look at myself now, and it was through Binny and through you that I am here. These other activities, mental and physical, in French there's an expression, ça va sans dire. That goes without saying. Of course I can do this. Of course I can do that. Of course I know the products I'm going to have on the stand at the farmer's market this spring. Of course I know we're changing over all our growth medium over the next 12 to 18 months, if I'm still here, because I know that you've got to replenish. Yeah, see, that's the whole thing with farming. Farming is replenishing. You replenish the earth. You make it livable for microorganisms and worms and all the rest of that. And the body has to be replenished constantly with mental and physical. It's a form of rejuvenation. You know, people are looking for Viagra and they're looking for hormones, for more energy and everything. Well, if you have an insufficiency, that's fine. But that energy comes from you and with some strong assistance from outside. You got to do it. You have no choice. Otherwise, as my mother said, and she was quite active, but when she saw the end was, she would say, I'm in God's waiting room. That's where she is. And I don't ever think that I'm in God's waiting room. I'm just here.
Exactly, you're here. And that's it. I loved this last part and how encouraging and how motivated you got to say, and that's it. Let's finish here. We're right here. Let's just do it. Let's just make it happen. Like Ronnie, he has gone through a lot of things and he's better than us and making and looking ways to do things better. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope, Ronnie, we can see you on your farm and you can show us how to do something so we can at least learn and do something in our houses. Maybe I could start growing tomatoes or someone else can start growing something with your motivation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for seeing both Benny and I today.